By the way, how did I end up becoming the host of this thing? I'm kind of not sure that I'm the best person for that.
I don't know, but I love it.
Like, I'm the least experienced, I think, to be in that role, and somehow I'm in it. I don't know why it's not BJ, the guy that hosts his own podcast, or Sam, the one that hosts his own YouTube show, or Drew that's on a podcast, or Austin that's always on someone else's podcast.
See, no, because you're one of the bosses. So we need that authority figure to bring us all together.
I'm going to keep you guys in check. So
I like it because if you're not doing it and you don't write anyways, then these guys are using their time doing that instead of writing.
Wait, what? Writing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not doing any of that right now anyway. So.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, by the way, I'm going to need one of you guys to write the post that this YouTube video is going to be embedded in. So
Sure. Yeah. Cool.
Austin, I'm looking at you.
I can do it. Yeah, that's fine.
All right, guys, so welcome to the first episode of the Vikings Territory Roundtable. The Roundtable is a new series we're starting here where we're just going to get together and chat about the latest Vikings news. As we kind of get down the road a little bit, we're going to add some additional features into the fold, like bringing on special guests or do an event line after games, but this is our first go-about, so we're just going to keep it internal and just have the VT team here. So really quick, we're going to do some intros. We'll go around the table. I'll start. My name is Brett Anderson. I'm co-owner of VT, and I'm the unlucky guy that has the responsibility of keeping all of these characters on task and organized during this thing. Down on the bottom right, we have Adam Warwas. Go ahead and wave, Adam, so everyone knows where you're at. The co-owner of VT and a grizzly bear fanatic. I tried to add some special notes about all of you guys. So in the upper right, we got Austin Belial. He's our editor-in-chief and a self-proclaimed Batman fanboy. So
I do. Here, I'll reveal it. I have a
just Batman.
Batman.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. We got BJ Rydell down in the bottom left-hand corner. He's our content coordinator and a hip-hop connoisseur. Sam, would you say hip-hop connoisseur? I don't know.
I'll take it.
Okay.
I feel like people can outdo me in that regard. So it's a little dangerous with Twitter and all that stuff. People are gonna attack me for that.
Yeah, it's all right. You can handle it. In the bottom middle, we got Sam Newman. He's a contributor at VT, and he is the host of the wildly successful show on YouTube, Bump and Run.
Yes.
We're honored to have him here tonight.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
And then in the upper middle, we have Drew Mahold. He is a VT contributor as well, and he is our resident Jim Kleinsasser expert.
Of course. So, I don't have a tattoo, though. I don't got his face on there.
He hasn't got his Kleinsasser tattoo yet. Yeah. Maybe next year. All right, so this is obviously going to be a free agency episode, more or less, because we're right in the thick of free agency. So we were going to start off just kind of going around the table and seeing how you guys felt about the moves the Vikings have made so far. Not really sure who I'm going to pick to start. Maybe let's go with Sam. So Sam, how do you feel so far about what the Vikings have managed to do at this point?
Overall, I would say satisfied. I mean, I'm not ecstatic, but the thing I try to keep in mind and sometimes put out there on Twitter is that a lot of the signings that happen in free agency won't end up working out. They just won't. I always bring up the 2011 Eagles, that whole thing where they went crazy, and I don't think any of the guys were left on the team 3 years later, and they just weren't very good. So I think we've seen building a team, the best way to do it is through the draft. Obviously, you need to supplement with free agency, and I think they've done the best they can. They got 2 tackles. Are they the best tackles on the market? No. I think Reef is a very good option. And beyond that, I don't know a lot. I would love to see him sign Lacey. We're hoping that for any minute, but we'll see.
Yeah, we might be breaking that news during the midst of this episode. Hopefully. I think some of us are all of us saying hopefully that Lacey
Yeah.
gets signed?
Hopefully, yes.
Is everyone on board with that? DJ, you're kind of making a weird face. Are you on board with the Lacey thing if it happens during the episode? Are you
Yeah,
going
I
to
mean-
celebrate or?
Yeah, I mean, I've been fighting for it since day one. I think I actually, Drew and I actually started a poll against the rest of you guys saying that signing Eddie Lacy to Minnesota was a great idea. And
I was
You know,
on
we
that
got a
train too. I was with you on that
Sam
one.
Sam was in there, but we definitely had a little internal battle on the Eddie Lacy, idea. And it seems like it's more than an idea at this point. I'm all for it, no doubt.
All
And
right.
I think I was the one who started we shouldn't bring him to Minnesota train. And then I switched, and no one ever said anything. I was on the other side of the argument, and you guys were like, "Oh, you're crazy. We should sign him." And then, now I'm on the bring Lacey to Minnesota train, and I haven't gotten any crap for it. So I'm with you guys now.
Well, we weren't
We're
going to call you out.
Yeah, thank you for doing that, though.
I've been waiting for it.
Yeah. So how about you, Adam? What do you think about the move so far? And let's not forget about, I know we got Reef and Remmers, but let's not forget about the people we've let go as well. So that's part of
Yeah,
it.
I think those are the main themes. The Vikings are obviously letting a lot of players go that weren't restricted. At the very least, they're letting them test the market and then bowing out once the contract numbers get too high, and they're letting players leave. Now, none of these players are super impactful. I'm curious to see what happens with Patterson. I think he's the most impactful of the bunch, just because he's an elite kick returner, and that might be all he does, but he's elite at doing that. And that's not something you can just go pick up next year in free agency potentially. As far as who they've let go and who they've brought in, I think it's interesting. People are kind of up in arms over the offensive tackles and the money they're getting. I don't think it's that outlandish, and I think when you look at the big picture, the money they've given those two guys still doesn't equal what they've saved by letting Adrian Peterson walk in terms of cap hits.
I like that.
Yeah. I don't know. It kind of sucks that we're in that position to have to spend that much money at tackle and stuff, but I guess it is what it is. This is.
But we're not the only ones, though, right?
No,
this
I
is
know.
the market.
It's across the league.
Sure.
Yeah. So,
There's an epidemic across the NFL, and especially at offensive tackle, but offensive line in general.
yeah.
And when you miss big, like the Vikings have missed big on Khalil and a number of others, that's the position you're in. You either go to the rookie market and, roll the dice, which at this point the odds are stacked against you.
Especially when you don't have a first-round pick.
Especially when you don't have a first-round pick. So you go out there and you get who you can get. I'm not as down on Remmers as a lot of people seem to be. And I think the Vikings did all right. And they still have the money. They didn't have to give up any more draft picks to get these two dudes. Money can be used in the future. We still have the second wave of free agency, the third wave of free agency, veteran cuts coming during training camp and after the draft. And we still have to worry about extending our own guys. There's a chance that the Vikings are going to need to extend Bradford sometime next offseason.
Yeah, I always forget about that.
Yeah.
And that's a huge pile of money that we're talking about sitting in limbo in terms of future deals to retain the players we do have that we do like. It's not always about going out and getting the new talent as much as it is keeping your core guys together.
Yeah.
I think people just wanted to kind of see what, like what the Lions did, getting both Ricky Wagner and TJ Lang. I think that's kind of what the fan base wanted, which, I understand that. But I think, I honestly don't know how the Lions were able to obtain both of those players. It just doesn't seem like, it's kind of like, because I think when I think of, Minneapolis, Minnesota in kind of attracting free agency, I think of the cold weather and I think of the income tax at whatever, it's like top 5 in the country, by state. So those two things kind of put the Vikings at an inherent huge disadvantage in attracting free agents. So, I guess I'm not really sure what Michigan's income tax is or whatever, but, I just think people have to, keep in mind the disadvantages that Spielman has to deal with when trying to sign free agents because, obviously the Vikings haven't had historic success either. Add those two things on top, and it's got to be tough for them to negotiate.
But it feels like we should be an ideal landing spot, no? I mean, I've seen a lot of people talking about how, what's wrong with Rick? He can't get these guys to come here. But it seems like all things considered, with our leadership and coach, despite what some upset parents might be saying out there right now, new stadium, young team that's, I guess, on the rise, or was on the rise prior to last year, but I guess I'd still say they're on the rise. I don't know. It seems like it should be an ideal landing spot. However, I guess there is a feeling out there now that maybe we're not, or maybe Rick is having a hard time bringing some of these guys in. What do you think, Drew? I'm sorry, not Drew, BJ. I see you down there in the corner. Looks like you got something to say.
I think that it's difficult to overlook the fact that these guys they're all making major life decisions, and while we as fans don't necessarily think about that, there's family involved, there's security involved, and all of that stuff comes into it as well. And as a fan, you don't want to think about that kind of stuff. You just want to think about the fact that, hey, we've got the cap room, we need this position. Why isn't Ricky Wagner coming to Minnesota? Why wouldn't he come here? But, how about the fact that possibly Ricky Wagner's wife or fiance or significant other or whatever personally enjoyed Detroit more than, the idea of living in Minneapolis? We don't know the answer to that question, but it plays a humongous role, and it's something that we never find out as fans. So, while it is potentially discouraging that even a guy like TJ Lang wouldn't come to Minnesota after, being such a bitter rival of the team and kind of having a very good idea of what the Minnesota Vikings were missing last season that kind of kept them away from being a better team. You just can't discount the intangible stuff that we just don't always think about as fans, because we're so we're so into the idea of just getting our guys because it's possible. This isn't Madden. This is real life, and that's an important distinction to make. And as far as I'm concerned, the Vikings have done a great job, and Rob Brzezinski continues to be one of the best cap guys in the league and continues to put the Vikings in a great situation moving forward.
I think BJ touches on a lot of great points from the player's perspective, but we also got to look at Spielman and Brzezinski and the Vikings organization historically. I think their free agents tend to fall into two categories. One, it's a contract that they feel confident that the player's going to last long term. They're not overpaying them to the point where they got to cut bait, and the player is youthful enough that they can continue to play out through the life of their contract. The second type of contract they'd like to give out are one-year prove-it deals, and that's the intent, is to get 1 year out of that player. What the Vikings have been very good at avoiding, even with the disastrous, terrible signings like Bernard Berrien and some of the others of the past, are getting into these contracts that are so inflated, so terrible, that they have to cut bait after a year or two, regardless of if the player's okay or not. They just cost way too much to be able to do anything else on the roster. So from that standpoint, I appreciate that Spielman's not going out there and locking our future out just to get the name in town.
You have to look at the way that the deals are shaped up too, right? The way that Riley Reif's deal is, reportedly construed is basically it's a play it as you go type of deal after the first two seasons. So yeah, while it is a $56 million contract or whatever, it's also just basically 2 years guaranteed, and then the Vikings can let him walk. I guarantee a guy like Ricky Wagner, who's looking to cash in big for the first time in his career and has no, reason to come to Minnesota versus somewhere else like Reif did, being a guy that wanted to stay in the Midwest and from South Dakota, played at college in Iowa. It made more sense for him to do a play-it-as-you-go deal at a younger age than a guy like Wagner, who's just wants to hit it big somewhere. And Detroit gave him the big number and more security potentially, and that's just kind of sometimes that's the difference maker, especially for a guy like Andrew Whitworth. By the way, why wouldn't he take more security than as opposed to a play-it-as-you-go deal when you're nearing the end of your career, and his contract, he'll be 38 years old when the contract he signed expires. So it just makes more sense for some of these players to, do the way they did it, and versus, I guess how we feel about it. That's just an important intangible that when you look into like the nitty gritty of the contract, there's a reason why some guys sign in Minnesota and some guys go elsewhere.
Yeah. Did any of you guys? Sorry. Go ahead, Sam.
Just real quick, and I just think that we almost forget every year, but I don't know why we would have expected Spielman to come into this free agency period and go nuts. He's never done that. I mean, that's not the way I feel like a guy like Riley Reef is about as high profile as he's gone in terms of the contract that he got and his experience. And that's like Adam made a very good point. There's a very specific type of player and type of contract he goes after in free agency. And I think a lot of these guys, who's to say he even went after a lot of these guys? They say he called on TJ Lang. I'm sure he did. I'm sure he did his due diligence. I doubt he went after him that hard because he knew how much he was going to command. And that just kind of, there's a certain way he operates, and I feel like we're just seeing that here again this year.
Yeah, do any of you guys know off the top of your head where this contract ranks and where Reef's contract ranks and, based against past free agents that we brought in?
It's 8th against left tackles in the league right now.
Well, but I mean, as far as in the past 5 years for the Vikings, has there been a contract that we've awarded?
You got to think about Linval Joseph's contract, which was $42 million when he signed it, and then that was the big one in 2014. Then you got to go back to Steve Hutchinson, probably. That was at the time, with inflation and whatnot, it's probably right in the same general area. I think that this probably ranks as the current number one, but at the same time, the salary cap went up $10 million this offseason. There's a reason why they were able to spend more money than they had in the past. But comparatively speaking, I think this is right on par with Steve Hutchinson's deal. When you consider the fact that the cap has gone up and the fact that there is a higher market value for the left tackle position than probably there ever has been, given that there really aren't that many. There are really only 5 or 6 bona fide studs at left tackle right now, and with a draft class that doesn't really boast a dominant candidate to step in and start, Ryan Ramczyk maybe being the best and Garrett Bowles possibly second, being that he's already 25 years old. There's a lot of question marks in the draft, which really inflates that value. So I think the Vikings really did a good job of staying away from that huge number that we've seen teams like the New Orleans Saints, for example. There's a reason why they had to trade away Brandon Cooks. It's because they've blown their cap situation so many times over again, and they end up losing their young talent. The Vikings, on the other hand, they've got $26.5 million to re-sign their own guys, and you're going to be able to pay Adam Thielen, and if you want, Cordarrelle Patterson too, and potentially Eddie Lacy as well. And all that took was just cutting ties with Adrian Peterson. And the reason they were able to do that is because they signed Peterson to the type of deal where they could get out from underneath it at the time when they thought that he was going to fall off. So, you look back at history and you look back at the way these deals are structured and how they continue to play out. Brzezinski knows what he's doing. And sometimes you just got to trust the idea of what, Spielman is trying to do, and then look back at teams like Tampa Bay, who 2 years ago spent all kinds of money in free agency and are allowing Eltron Werner, their big money free agent from 2 years ago, walk away in free agency once again. Free agency isn't a guaranteed thing. Yeah, there's teams like Oakland that did a great job last season and cashed in with Rodney Hudson and a couple of guys and vaulted themselves in the postseason. But the Vikings didn't need a lot this offseason. They just needed something, and they improved tremendously at their offensive line positions this offseason.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that generally, big free agency signings don't necessarily work out. So let's move on, though. I want to talk about Captain Munnerlyn, probably the biggest loss we've had so far. Do you guys think it was a mistake letting him go, and how do you see his role being filled, whether it be with someone presently on the roster or a potential free agent signing or a draft pick? Austin, let's go to you since you've been kind of quiet up there in the corner.
Sure, yeah. So I actually wrote about free agent cornerbacks when we did our little series, and I was hoping that Munnerlyn would stay. I said, keep Munnerlyn, cut Newman, and stuff from reporters today made it seem like Newman was probably on the outs, but I think Munnerlyn's decision to sign with Carolina changes things. I wasn't a fan of it. I get it. I get going back home to Carolina. I get wanted to take the big deal. But for the Vikings, it kind of leaves them in a bind of, do you put Mackenzie Alexander, who struggled like crazy last year, let him try and get through the growing pains of being an NFL cornerback, or do you go out and you get a guy like, what's his name, Nickel Roby? Or his name's Nickel.
Nickel Roby Coleman from Buffalo.
His name's Nickel, so I don't know why you don't go out and get someone like that.
It's meant
but
to be, right?
it's meant to be, but the only logical solution, I guess, with the roster as it is, would be slide Mackenzie Alexander inside and roll with what you got. But I don't know. It seems like it's going to be up to them, whether it be in the draft, which is a strong cornerback class, or the rest of free agency to pick somebody up to replace the void he left.
Are we really that worried about Mackenzie Alexander?
I am.
Yeah, so Sam, you are. Austin, you're not. Drew, you are. Was that it?
I mean, kind of. I mean, it's.
And BJ shaking his head like. And I guess I kind of stand on. I'm not that worried either. I mean, there was his playing time was so limited. I mean, and he was a rookie. I mean, and you got Zimmer, the cornerback whisperer. So I mean, we saw the similar struggles from Trey Waynes, and he bounced back in his second year. So I guess personally, I'm not as worried as it seems like a lot of other people are. I guess I'd be fine with bringing someone else in, but I don't think it's as a horrible situation as a lot of other people do, I guess. So go ahead, Drew.
I think how you feel about Treadwell is how you feel about Alexander, because with Treadwell, it's kind of, you either say, well, he didn't get a chance to play at all, or the reason he's not playing, didn't produce, is because he's not any good. And I think however you feel, or however you kind of feel on that spectrum is kind of where you are on Alexander. I think personally, probably because and then with Alexander, he had this very small sample size, and he just to me, he didn't seem like he was ready for NFL competition when he was out there. But and again, like you said, the coaching staff has a good history of kind of developing these guys, and obviously Xavier Rhodes is now a true shutdown corner. Trey Waynes is kind of on his way there. Obviously has his own flaws, but I think with cornerback position, it's a little bit different because you can have a little bit more optimism. But yeah, I mean, I still need more from Alexander for sure to feel comfortable, and that's why I kind of would want, if the team really wants to go, all in on 2017 with the Super Bowl in town and whatnot, I would bring in, a replacement kind of with some more experience rather than have Alexander be that guy.
What about you, Sam? Go ahead, Adam.
I'm not the most worried person in the world about Treadwell, but I think I feel differently about the two because of how their preseason performances went last year. I thought Alexander looked like an NFL player in the preseason. I thought Treadwell looked lost in the preseason.
There you go.
That's a good point.
Interesting. I didn't watch the preseason, but
wow.
Yeah, Alexander. I mean, he played so little, but there was nothing that I saw during the regular season when he did play to indicate to me that he was ready to be an NFL player. Certainly not be a nickel cornerback where he's going to be on the field so much. Now we give him the opportunity to improve like every other player, and we hope he does. I guess I'm not enamored with Zimmer's record at developing corners. Xavier Rhodes and Trey Waynes, sure, those are first-round guys. Those guys should be good. I don't think either of them is dramatically outplayed their draft position. And Waynes, I still think
back further.
He's not there. Sure. So go back further.
Drake, Kirkpatrick, Terrence Newman.
But Kirkpatrick was a first-round pick as well, right?
Newman was like top 10. Yeah, absolutely.
He's 18. He went 18.
I mean, I think it's a valid point. I'm trying to think if I can think of anyone else that was a later round pick that Zimmer molded into being above average to elite cornerback. I guess I can't think of anyone off the top of my head. Can you guys?
Captain Munnerlyn.
But that
7th round pick that became an all-pro caliber nickel under Zimmer over the last couple of years.
Captain Munnerlyn kind of had his own. He had he was kind of established before he got to Minnesota.
There's Pac-Man Jones too, when he was completely out of the league essentially, and he brought him into Cincinnati, and all of a sudden he was a Pro Bowler again.
But was
Yeah,
there
but
ever?
we got in trouble. Trouble was the problem.
Yeah,
with
yeah.
that.
There was never any question about his skill set. It was more his character concerns, I believe.
I think the original point, though, that Zimmer, I think you have to give him credit in terms of being able to evaluate these players that have been first-round picks.
Sure.
First-round picks wash out at a pretty decent rate, and I don't think any of his first-round defensive backs have really washed out. Roy Williams, he was great for a while, and then his career got cut short. But
DJ's in deep thought over there.
I'm trying to think of who 2007 cornerback was in Atlanta. I can't remember, but
Too bad we're all not sitting in front of computers.
the basis of this entire discussion.
Huh?
I mean, we can talk all day about debate whether or not Zimmer has been successful developing cornerbacks. That's going to be a subjective thing regardless. But with Mackenzie Alexander, the issues that people are seeing and the reason why there's concern is mainly him playing outside. The big one that everyone remembers is him getting blown away on the outside that he allowed a touchdown, and he was coming in for 2 snaps in for Xavier Rhodes, who went out with a head injury. Cornerback is a rhythmic position. You need to be out there for a couple of. It's like the same thing as rotating in. Jake Long, when they did that early last season, and it didn't work out for long, and all of a sudden you put him in there and let him play 40, 50 snaps, and he starts playing a lot better. Cornerback is a very similar way in that you try to you have to eye up your competition, and you learn their tendencies. It's not just about seeing it on film, but it's just like seeing it right in front of your face too. Mackenzie Alexander never played more than I think 12 snaps last season, and his biggest fails were on the outside, first of all. So he didn't even play much in the slot. I think it was only like 8 snaps in the slot all of last season. And on top of that, he was coming in just rotationally, kind of not even qualifying as like a spot starter. He was just being thrown into the fire randomly, and that's what's going to happen when you're a rookie and you're not out there and you have no experience against NFL competition. You're going to get burned. That's just what happens. But this is the cockiest person in the entire world. If anyone should take anything away from his performance last season, it's Mackenzie Alexander, and I guarantee you he comes back stronger because he's been talking a big game for like 5 years now, and he cares more about his performance than any of us, combined times a million. That guy literally has made a persona.
I'm taking
based
the
off
show
of how
pretty
much
seriously.
Yes, he does, and it's just I see him as being the type of guy that's going to rebound from this, I guess, debacle. He didn't play enough last season for any of us to really judge him, I don't think. At the same time, I think the thing that we should be more concerned about is the fact that he, got put on IR towards the end of the season, and that he's not going to, potentially have a full off season to get himself prepared for this. And if anything, that is the reason why the Vikings should bring in someone else to play nickel for him. It's because he might not have a full off season, depending on how his injury, rehabilitation has progressed over the course of, the last couple of months here.
I think the
Completely forgot about
Vikings fan base needs to understand that they have an old school coach. And I'm not that old, and I can remember when it was expected that a wide receiver or a cornerback would take 3 years to develop into a good player. Zimmer is an old school coach, and if I can remember those days, I know he can too. And I think that he is going to ease these guys into it. And both Treadwell and Mack came into the league with questions about their cockiness that BJ brought up, and that they think that they can't do any wrong. And I think maybe they need to be humbled a little bit, and they do need to sit on the bench and learn from veterans like Terrence Newman. And I think this is all by design, that they're not going to be thrown in until injuries force their hand or until they're good and ready.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that what Spielman said, though, that when they draft a player, they expect them to be on a 3-year arc until they really hit their stride? Do you think that's just Spielman saying that to match what Zimmer believes, or that's just their philosophy as a franchise?
I think that's exactly the same as Spielman saying Adrian Peterson's going to be a Viking forever.
I think that's
I was
saying.
gonna say, I think he's full
I
of
think
shit.
that's saying the worst and hoping for the best. I mean,
Yeah.
Probably.
yeah, I think you kind of get people ready for the worst case scenario, and then if someone performs year one, then great. I saw it the whole time.
And,
Right.
and there was no reason to take Terrence Newman off the field last year.
Yeah. Yeah, with Alexander, I mean, we all expect him to improve, but any sort of assumption on that is just a projection at this point. And that's with him and Treadwell. It's based on their draft status. So we do expect that. We hope for that to happen. I think all Drew and I were saying, at least me, I can speak for, was that I'm not especially comfortable going into him with him as the nickel cornerback going into the season. I'd like to see some competition there.
Yeah, and I think there will be. I think we'll see at least one, if not two, free agent corners signed at the right price in a contract that fits in one of those two categories we mentioned earlier. And I think you'll see defensive backs drafted as well. You can never have too many cornerbacks, too many good cornerbacks anyways. And, Zimmer's ability to develop corners, we'll see. Time will tell how he does here with the Vikings, but there's only so much you can do with the prospects that you're given. Nobody, even if Zimmer had been here, was going to make Asher Allen a Pro Bowler.
That is true.
Oh my God, I forgot about that guy. Ooh.
All right, so let's move on. So it's been kind of crazy to me. I don't know. We've seen, at least I have, from your average fan, you've seen a lot of people very upset about this free agency period. Some people even calling for Spielman's head after, I guess, his lack of big name signings. Is that unfair? And then I want to say, is that unfair if we have a repeat season of last year's abysmal offensive line play? I'm interested. I mean, we even had a comment on VT, right, that said we need to go get the Pats GM right away and get him to Minnesota to replace
Anything else?
Spielman.
Okay, can I get you anything else? I mean, you want Bart Starr at quarterback? Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have a pretty good head coach as well. I wouldn't mind him,
Yeah.
as much as I love Zimmer. But I don't know. So, do any of you guys agree with that sentiment? I mean, are any of you guys worried about Spielman, or think we need to make a move, change, or? Drew, you look like you're ready to say something.
I don't understand that at all. I can't believe, it's disrespectful for one thing, but it's ignorant too. I mean, that's expecting so much out of your team and so much out of your GM. I said this on Twitter actually too. The whole basis behind Spielman's the hate or the kind of the crowd that wants him gone is that he hasn't won a playoff game. Which, that's a fair take. But, I mean, I think of, the kick that we don't want to think about. But, if Blair Walsh makes that kick, this whole argument isn't even, it doesn't exist anyway. I mean, Spielman turned this team from when in 2011 they were 3-13 and arguably the worst team in the league. And then hired Zimmer after, the Vikings were the worst defense in the league in 2013. And this team transformed into a playoff team in 2015 that should have won a playoff game. And then obviously, the injuries that kind of, drilled this team last year at one position, you can't prepare for that. I mean, obviously, I would say the combination of his, maybe biggest flaw in that he hasn't drafted well at the offensive line, plus the injuries. Obviously, that kind of was their undoing last year. But, I'd say if you want him gone now, I'd give him a chance to at least kind of disprove what happened last year. I don't know. I guess that's my take.
Well, I think it goes back to Adam's point that as an organization, they're not making bad deals, and two, okay, let me back up. They're not making bad deals, but I think the funniest thing to me is that when Khalil's numbers were announced for his contract, and then, I don't know, a day later, Reef came out, Reef, whatever it is, people came out and they're like, oh my God, we paid him more than Khalil, and I'm like, do you realize what they just got rid of and offloaded for $55 million to the Carolina Panthers? Is a guy who can't even stay on the field to play left tackle. And I think the thing with me is it's a bit of bad luck with all the injuries and whatnot. I think that's a bit of an excuse because everybody deals with injuries. But it's not like Spielman's putting the team in bad positions with the players that he brings in. It's Linval Joseph, Captain Munnerlyn. This year you've got 2 new tackles, and I think the biggest knock, and Brett would agree with me, is that he can't draft offensive linemen.
Yeah,
Or at least he hasn't shown an ability to do that.
Yeah, I feel like, I'll say for the record that I don't think, Spielman's job is on the line at this point. However, I feel like we let him off the hook for the offensive line a lot, and I think we blame it on injuries, but I think it's a lot more than injuries, and I think he's shown throughout his career that he has a problem locating offensive line talent. And maybe it's not a problem locating, maybe it's just he doesn't have a strong desire to address it or doesn't want to put the resources there because he thinks we can do without it. But I feel like we're kind of letting him off the hook for this situation we're in. And I'm not in the fire Spielman camp, but I'm also not in the, he was a casualty of injuries last season. Because I think if you look at it, how many people on the offensive line got injured that we were confident we're gonna make a change on the offensive line if they weren't injured? Khalil is the only guy I can think of, really, right?
Mike Harris.
Huh?
Mike Harris. Sure.
Mike Harris too. Yeah.
Smith was your starting right tackle. I wasn't crazy about him, but
yeah, and that's what I mean.
He
He went down with injury, but he also wasn't going to be a game changer. I don't think anyone thought that he was going to come in and solve the right tackle position.
No, I think it would have been an upgrade over who ended up starting there during the season, and just another body. But yeah, not a game changer.
Yeah. Adam?
I think it'd be unfair to say that he has a problem drafting offensive linemen. I just think the problem here recently has been that he hasn't, since Khalil, drafted anyone high. He was around, correct me if I'm wrong, John Sullivan, Brandon Fusco, Phil Lodeholt, right? Am I wrong on those 3?
But,
No, you're right.
But isn't not allocating resources there a problem? And isn't it just as much of a problem as not being able to identify the talent?
Well, I think those 3 guys I just listed, he allocated resources by both drafting them.
Okay,
and
but who were those guys?
John Sullivan, Phil Lodeholt, and Brandon Fusco, who were very, very good players at one point in their career, and he invested in them the first time around and then gave them that second contract.
Are we really giving Fusco to Spielman?
Yeah.
Why?
Why wouldn't we?
He had one good season, and now he's
He
gone.
was the head of the triangle of authority during that period when he was drafted.
But I'm
He was
saying,
a
but
He was
Fusco's
a 6th
gone.
rounder out of Slippery Rock.
I know,
Yeah,
but he
that's a
had one
great
good
pick.
season, and
Brett.
now he's gone. So what are we giving him credit for?
Brett.
Yeah.
Tell me where Slippery Rock is.
It's in Pennsylvania, actually. My what's it called? My stepsister actually is looking at going to college there because my parents live like 5 miles from it. So actually, I do know where Slippery Rock is. Nice try, Adam.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I actually did a post about this last summer because I went through Rick Spielman's drafting history of offensive linemen, and what I kind of concluded was sort of to Brett's point where he just hasn't allocated the resources to drafting offensive linemen high. He's drafted a number low in the 4th, 5th round and later, and those picks on offensive line just don't work out very well for anyone. I think Spielman had a few percentage points lower than the average, but those picks just are tough to work out. Sometimes you get a Sullivan or a Slippery Rock, but those are rare. And so he just hasn't drafted any high. He drafted Khalil. That worked out briefly, and then it didn't work out after that. So I don't know. I think if he were to spend more high picks, we'd have a better idea if he's able to identify the talent.
And I think there's something else there that's missing. I brought it up the other day, but and I was about to come full circle and say that I actually do think it's fair to criticize Spielman as much as any of us want to. But I don't think it's that he can't identify the talent, but I think there's some disconnect after he brings them in. Remmers this isn't his first time at Winter Park, and now we're paying him how much money?
Yeah.
Sure.
Someone want to tell me how different this last decade would have been had we not cut Donald Penn loose in 2006? That guy was better than Bryant McKinney like a year later.
Yeah.
There's a disconnect there between being patient and having to play the guys that you've invested a lot into.
I feel like you're saying in a roundabout way that he does have a problem identifying offensive line talent.
Well,
can I defend Adam then? Because I don't think he has a problem identifying talent at all. He identified talent twice with TJ Clemmings and David Yankee too, but both those guys just didn't pan out. TJ Clemmings had a first-round grade on him. I don't care if you guys don't remember that or not, but he had a first-round grade, and then he had a foot fracture that ended up bouncing him down to the 4th round. So he identified a player that had slid in the draft, picked him up at a value, and he just didn't pan out. And
Yeah, but he's awful.
Yeah,
But
what's
he's
your point?
I get that, but like I get
you-
that, but he's not like it's not like you can't just say like, all right, this guy is a guaranteed success story. Some of it has to go into coaching as well. When he drafts some of these guys, I mean, what happened with David Yankee? That guy was a bona fide stud coming out of Stanford. Most people thought he was going to be a 2nd or 3rd round pick. He slides to the 5th, and everyone celebrated that. Same thing happened with Clemmings too. So I don't understand like the idea of saying that he can't identify players. Matt Khalil was a home run, okay? An absolute home run pick. There is no one in their right mind that didn't think that Matt Khalil was a bona fide stud for 10 years plus, all right? And he got hurt.
Actually, I think Adam may have. Now that I go back and remember that, Adam may have. I was on the Matt Khalil train 100%, and I agree that there was no other move that should have been made that year. And actually, we proclaimed how much of a genius he was because he traded down, I think, right, and still managed to.
Yeah, he got 3 picks from Cleveland and let them because he got him, scared him into drafting Trent Richardson in front of him. I mean,
I wish that we had some readers that can't come back about once a year to let me know how much I loved the Matt Khalil pick, because at that time they said that he was not motivated and that he would not work out, and we should not draft him. Now they thought we should draft Justin Blackman instead,
Yeah, see, there
but still, they're not shy about coming back and letting me know that I called him a surefire.
Can we just look around the league too at where the offensive tackle position is at league wide? By the way, like the fact that most teams don't have good offensive tackles right now, like period. Offensive line is an issue around the league. Dallas has a great offensive line. Green Bay has a great offensive line. Oakland is in the midst of building a very good offensive line.
Free agency.
Seriously, show me Tennessee has 2 good bookends. Show me a team that has a dominant offensive line aside from the ones that everyone goes to when you're talking about offensive line play.
Austin's raising his hand. That's the first VT Roundtable hand raise. Go ahead, Austin.
I've resisted. Well, I mean, there's a couple teams, Cleveland, who loaded up this offseason with offensive line talent.
Through free agency.
What did I say?
No, you didn't specify.
Oh,
I'm just saying, I think BJ talked about the Raiders, and I think they kind of did it through free agency, right? And then you're talking about Cleveland. That's
Hudson and Penn, yeah. But
you could argue the Lions are right up there now with Wagner, and who else did they get? Lang and...
But now we're talking projections again, which you guys just told me that we disqualified Mackenzie Alexander being like a sure fit by saying that's a projection.
I'm not saying Mackenzie.
We don't know how Ricky Wagner's going to play out in Detroit.
I think he'll be fine, and I think
why can we just say that though? We can't. It's just a projection, like everything else here.
Yeah. I mean, it's true, but
and he's a right tackle going in to play left tackle.
In Detroit, he's automatically like his Madden rating will drop 10 points because he's a Lion.
Yeah,
Sure.
That's true. Real quick, BJ, you were talking about guys like Yankee and Clemmings who were studs coming out of college. That doesn't matter though. And to say that Yankee slipped to the 5th round.
Why doesn't it matter though?
Because
I agree with Sam 100%. But go ahead, Sam.
5th round. All that matters is what he does in the NFL. Trent Richardson was great in college too. He was a bust. That's just what happens sometimes. And I get that there's coaching and there's a lot of things.
But we're talking about identifying, not like my premise was that he.
And he did not identify players that would be good in the NFL.
BJ, you're using David Yankee and TJ Clemmings as like an example of how he identified talent just because they were considered a value late in the draft. Well, maybe there's a reason they fell to the 5th, 6th, whatever round. I mean, maybe other teams were able to identify what Spielman wasn't and say,
But
these guys aren't.
Does the offensive coaching not have anything to do with it?
I don't
was
think any of
trash.
us know enough to be able to say like Jeff Davidson is the problem. I mean, I've heard some people say,
Well, he got fired.
Huh?
He must have been some sort of a problem because he got fired.
I guess.
But then they brought in Sperano.
wasn't Adam's main point though that just correct me if I'm wrong? Wasn't Adam's point they find players? I mean, David Penn he's a stalwart left tackle, and I'm trying to think who was the other guy you said, Adam?
Donald, I think you said
Remmers.
Huh?
I think you said David.
Remmers.
Oh, Remmers. So, you know, they're not. It's not that they're not necessarily finding players. It's what's happening once they get in the building, and what is the determination on why you should let them go.
And that comes into the coaching. That's not just Spielman. What I'm saying.
But Spielman has to play a part if he's the one making GM. It's like if Bill Belichick said, "You know what? We're going to get rid of all these guys." Like,
Drew, we'll get to you.
Okay.
like, here's the difference between Belichick and Spielman. And Belichick knows, like, you know, this guy's not going to be any use to us. Get rid of Martellus Bennett, who's great, and bring in what's his name, the guy from the Dwayne Allen, right?
Yeah.
How much of a drop off are you really getting there in terms of what they do and offloading players when you need to offload players? It seems like Spielman doesn't have the understanding, at least with offensive linemen, of we should retain this guy and develop this guy, or we should cut loose and see what happens, because you know you lose out big when you make that mistake.
Okay,
Well,
Drew, go ahead really quick, and then we got to move on, Drew.
Okay, well, I was just going to say, I think a lot of what the fans are complaining about is the fact that I think what Adam alluded to is that allocating attention to the offensive line. I think it's top three round offensive linemen since 2006 or something like that, and I question if that might be due to the fact that the Vikings had a defensive coach since 2011 or whatever, with Leslie Frazier and now Mike Zimmer. I wonder if having, especially with Zimmer now too, he seems so defensive minded. He's said multiple times that he's not going to lay it all on the line for a new offensive line without kind of improving or stabilizing the defense. So I wonder if Rick's tendencies in the past to kind of not ignore the offensive line, but certainly kind of put it below on the priority list, if that has anything to do with having coaches that prioritize defense maybe more than offense.
I think that's fair.
And I think about 75% of the fans that complain like they do about the offensive line being neglected are full of it, because
I'm one of those people.
last offseason at this time, we needed to sign 57 wide receivers and draft another 7.
Exactly.
And
Exactly. If you were calling for offensive linemen in the draft,
and if
then
you
you
brought
can
up a
complain.
player that played anything other than wide receiver, why, by God, that's not our need. So we shouldn't even be talking about it.
Yeah, we're not going to let you get on your soapbox about draft needs, Adam. Okay.
Well, we get
We'll
into
save
that
that for
cycle
another
every year.
episode.
We get into that cycle every year, and we're back in that cycle now. They don't want to talk about anything other than offensive line because it happens to be the biggest need. I'm not going to say it's not. It definitely is. But that's how you end up neglecting a position or an offensive line, is by getting so need-based that you forget to accumulate talent elsewhere on the roster.
Yeah.
Agreed.
BJ, you have anything final notes on that? Yeah, I feel like you're upset over there or something. Like,
No, I'm not upset. It's just I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate here because I think that generally speaking, there's a lot of unfairness towards Rick Spielman going on in this general area right now, and so I'm kind of defending him. Whereas I do think that he could have done a better job with the offensive line since he took full control of the decision making in Minnesota, right? I'm not saying he doesn't deserve any blame whatsoever. But when you bring in Mike Zimmer, the first thing they do is they're getting him his edge rusher in Barr. Then they want to get him his cornerback in Wade. So those are your first two I guess first round talent picks. Then they need to get Teddy Bridgewater someone to throw to. So they go out and get Treadwell. And on top of that, he's catering to both Norv and Zimmer with those first round picks. It's not necessarily about the fact that he's neglecting the offensive line. He's getting the pieces that these guys need in order to run their offense or their defense respectively at an efficient rate. That's why those resources have been allocated the way they have been. And I just don't. I think it's unfair to blame Spielman for not drafting an offensive lineman in the last couple of years because, why wouldn't you think that a guy like Matt Khalil wouldn't eventually pan out if he could get healthy?
We can't hold him responsible for the Khalil pick. I mean, the Khalil pick, everyone would have made that pick except for Adam, apparently, at that position. It was universally the right decision. Everyone gave it the all-important draft grade of an A. So
I think
the point that I'm making,
Go ahead, finish, BJ.
and then I could stop talking on this subject entirely, is just simply that I think it's unfair to judge Spielman alone for the offensive line woes because Mike Zimmer has played a major role in the drafting over the last couple of years. I just think that when you look at what the offensive line was last year, it was second fiddle to the other issues, like Adam said. And that's why Treadwell came off the board instead of, say, Cody Whitehair, who was another guy that was, that was mentioned with the Vikings last season. I just think it's unfair to blame it all on Spielman.
Yeah, I think it's important when you're looking back over the history, the pedigree, that you understand Spielman's circumstances have changed. I like to go back to that Donald Penn thing in 2006. That the triangle of authority was in place.
With Childress was part of that.
As far as I know, he might have been getting coffee for Childress.
Right.
Find so much blame, and none of us six have any idea what percentage of blame goes to
I
him.
feel like Brad Childress is a tea guy. He drinks tea.
Probably.
Accurate. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're gonna move on from that. We beat that.
So I do have one question, Brett.
Oh yeah.
Can I ask
And
one?
then go ahead and ask your question. Then I'm gonna take a vote.
Who made the decision to draft Willie Beavers? That's all I want to know.
Fair point.
That's
I think that's Tony Sperano, personally. That's what I think. I'm not.
And it's
I
hard
think that's on Tony
because
Sperano.
Well, one thing on that though, are we writing off Beavers already? I am. But theoretically, if we are, why don't we give him the same opportunities we're giving Treadwell and Alexander?
Pedigree.
draft.
Yeah,
Honestly,
draft
Sam,
position.
I think it's draft position where they were drafted.
My opinion on Alexander is based exclusively off of the work that I personally did on him and what I have seen on him. So I'm willing to go down in flames with my opinion on him based off the research and the film work that I did on him. Willie Beavers, that's just how I work personally. That's why I give Mackenzie Alexander more of a boost. Personally.
I can answer that. Mackenzie Alexander in college shut down the nation's best wide receivers on a regular basis.
Everyone.
Single game.
Everyone.
Willie Beavers just got beat every single game. Well, I have no idea why that
23 passes in Mackenzie Alexander's direction as a senior. 23 total.
Yeah. Treadwell was pretty good too, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm not ready to write off Treadwell, man. I think I'm like the most staunch Treadwell supporter probably. So
I'm with you, Brett. I'm with you.
I think we need to give him another year. Anyway, all right, so let's take a quick vote. I want to see you guys raise your hand if you think that Rick Spielman should be on the hot seat if we have another year of abysmal O-line play.
What?
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Hold on, I got to raise my hand too. So just two. Three?
Groupthink. Groupthink.
Wow. All right, so all three, so BJ, Sam, and Drew, you guys don't think that he should be on the hot seat if we have another year of similar O-line play as we did in 2016?
Nope.
No. I mean, you guys are kind of dismissing the injuries for me too much, which, I mean, I compared to 2015. Okay, 2015 offensive line was bad. All right, it was bottom half of the league, but
in contrast to 2016?
I'm saying no. I'm saying 2015 was much better than 2016, and the main difference between the 2 years was injuries. Am I wrong about that? And then obviously maybe
I think so. That's my personal opinion.
So I mean, I personally think the Vikings were our playoff team this year if the same offensive line of 2015 had played the entire season 2016. I think TJ Clemmings at right tackle would have made a huge difference. Obviously, Matt Khalil semi-healthy on the left side would have made a big difference. And obviously, you can think about think what you want about anything else here regarding the offense. But I personally think the Vikings are a playoff team with that same offensive line.
You guys pissed Sam off.
Yeah, he left.
He's
So
gone.
Sorry,
Oh,
guys,
there
bad
he is.
connection. I'm back.
I think your connection's still back, 'cause I don't think you're really back. You're kind of.
No, he's back. He's good.
There you go.
Good.
Now you're good. Okay, so let's move on really quick. Last question, and then we got to wrap this thing up because it's going to go too long. All right, what other moves would you guys like to see as we continue through this free agency period? Sorry, there's some dogs barking outside. So I'm going to start with, let's go Sam, since he got his connection fixed.
Nickel corner, I'd love to see another offensive lineman added. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. And then the Datone Jones thing really intrigued me. I didn't know I wanted that, but then I heard it and I decided I wanted it.
Okay. What about you, BJ?
I want a running back for sure. I want a thumper.
Do you have a
I want a
preference?
guy that can. I want someone that can absolutely take the load off of a feature back load off of whoever the rookie is going to be, whether it's Wayne Gallman or whoever
So
whoever it
McKinnon
is.
McKinnon is
I want someone to fortify that spot alongside McKinnon so we can ease in a rookie at the running back spot. I think that a cornerback would absolutely be a good idea. I'm not calling for one by any means, but I think that adding another one with Newman retiring likely and Munnerlyn gone, like Warwick said earlier, you can never have too many good cornerbacks, so I'm not against that by any means. And I would like to see something along the defensive line as well. That's something that we've talked about. And with Sharif Floyd's health kind of still up in the air and really no definitive answer other than the fact that he will be on the roster this season, I would like to see some sort of move to address that spot. I don't know what exactly I want. Probably someone that can kind of move around. I think Carl Klug from Tennessee probably makes the most sense just because I think he's a good price and he can move along the 5-3 and even into the inside a little bit. So that would be three things that I would like to see. But honestly, I'm pretty satisfied at this point.
Okay, so really quick, do you have a preference as far as your thumper running back?
Eddie Lacy has been my preference since day one because I think that he makes the most sense from a market value standpoint. The one that everyone wants to pick up on is Latavius Murray, and I think that he is kind of the marquee free agent at this position this offseason, and I think that he's going to end up going to Seattle once they kind of get their numbers together. And I think that I really think that Lacy makes a lot of sense with McKinnon. If you want a steamroller, you want thunder and lightning, that's thunder and lightning right there, folks.
Okay. All right, Drew.
Yeah, first of all, I want Lacy. I think, like BJ said, the thunder of lightning pair could be, I think, lethal. And I think Lacy's kind of track record out of shotgun, which is something that Pat Shurmur just loves to use. I think that just is a perfect fit, really. A name that I think he's taking. I don't think he's signed anywhere yet, but Don Terry Poe. I don't think he's signed anywhere yet. Seriously, I mean,
I still like it too. I'm with you.
The longer he's a free agent, I would assume the smaller his contract's going to be. I don't think the Vikings have shown much interest as far as anything that's been reported, but I would like him on the defensive line there as well. But then of course, I wouldn't complain about what's his name, Nickel. Roby Coleman. There's like 7 names to remember. Nickel, Roby Coleman. Yeah, I like him too. So that'd be I guess 3 guys that I could sign here. Yeah.
Austin, I'm going to go to you next, and I hope you drop our guy. You know,
Zach Brown. Give me Zach Brown, outside linebacker. Yeah, Zach Brown's a guy that I don't know where he is, what's happening with him in free agency. Eddie Lacy wrote about it yesterday. I'm not changing that take. And then a guy we haven't mentioned who I think could work out is Ladarius Webb from the Ravens. Played a little safety for the Ravens last year. Was one of the better slot cornerbacks until he ruined his knees. But he's 31 years old. I think he could work out in Minnesota. Those are the 3 guys I'd like to see him get.
Okay. And go ahead, Adam. Wrap us up.
Yeah, that's a tough question, but I'd like to see us find a Chewbacca to go next to Han Solo back there in the defensive secondary. I wrote about that. I'd love to see Harrison Smith get paired up with a truly great safety next to him. I just think that's the one item that could really take this defense to the next level. And I don't want his career to pass us by without ever seeing that. You know, we talk about Adrian Peterson and Chad Greenway, and these are guys that have never had all the pieces around them, all the pieces truly around them. And that secondary is so close if they can just get one more guy. And Sendeo, yeah, he's fine. He's fine. But I'd like to see them go out and find somebody, whether it's the draft or free agency. And I'd also love to see us get a backup quarterback that we could potentially trade to the Browns for a first-round pick.
We need names.
That once every 3 years.
We need names so we can put you on the record.
I don't deal in names.
I like this take a lot. You can just overwrite my audio with what Warwick just said. I'm all in on what he just said.
But who? Anyone in particular, Adam? As far as safety, like, would you be happy with Webb?
Yes, I'd be happy with Webb.
Does he fit your criteria? I'm curious. I don't think he does personally, but I'm curious what you have to say about that because he does have that ball hawk tendency.
He's got the ball hawk tendency. I think Webb would be an upgrade, absolutely. Whether or not he would turn out, again, we're back to projections. But that's
I like projections. I'm fine with those.
That's why Spielman gets paid the big bucks, is go find that guy that will fit what Coach Zimmer is trying to do, or have Coach Zimmer go do it, or find him in the draft. But no, seriously, as far as the starting lineup goes, I'd love to see us add another good safety or at least some competition. And then in the draft, I'd love to see us find a better quarterback situation. I mentioned earlier Spielman's worthy of criticism, and I mentioned that he should be on the hot seat. He should be on the hot seat now for not having a better quarterback situation in August of last year. And yes, if the offensive line is not better this next season, not having a first-rounder has probably got a lot to do with that, and that all goes back to neglecting the backup quarterback situation 1 year ago.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you. That's going to do it for our first VT Roundtable episode. So thank you to everyone that made it this far. If you're watching still, we're going to try and have one of these up every week. So check back for more. And we'd really appreciate a like if you could click the like button, or a subscribe. I know Sam would appreciate a subscribe, because not only will you get to see this, but you'll get to see Bump and Run when that starts coming back. So, all right. Well, thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you in about a week, probably.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.